I was standing at the counter of a neighborhood copy shop, the kind with squeaky swivel chairs and a bell that rings when the door opens, when the clerk printed my death certificate. Not a joke, not a prank, a crisp, state-sealed document that said I had died quietly at home 11 days earlier and that a memorial fund had been opened in my name. The clerk's gum went still in his mouth. My hand went cold on the counter. I had walked in to scan tax receipts for my quilting club, simple, ordinary, and walked out with a piece of paper certifying that I no longer existed. My name, my social security number, my birth date, and a signature that looked like mine if you squinted. The clerk apologized the way young people do when something breaks that should not break. "Ma'am," he whispered, "it came from a courthouse e-fax. I just hit print." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't faint. I slid the paper into my tote and felt the weight of it settle like a stone in a shallow lake. When the bell over the door rang behind me, a breeze pushed the smell of toner and coffee into the street. Somewhere, a church bell counted the hour. In Savannah, the air was thick and sweet, the way it is when the river is thinking about rain. My name is Ruth Ann Carter. I am 67 years old, and on a Tuesday at 9:08 a.m., the state of Georgia declared me dead while I was standing in line for quarters to do laundry. I did what people do when the ground opens quietly under them. I kept moving. I walked 2 blocks, turned left at the square with the oaks and the Spanish moss, and sat on a bench where tourists take pictures of themselves, smiling at history. I pressed my palms flat on the wood and counted my breath the way my physical therapist taught me after my hip surgery. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. Then I called the county number on the paper and said, as politely as a ghost can manage, "This is the deceased. I need to speak to the person who signed me out of the living." The woman on the line asked for my case number and said, "One moment," in a voice that made it clear this was not the strangest thing that had crossed her desk. Her keys clacked. She cleared her throat. "It shows you passed at home, and your daughter-in-law, Miss Olivia Carter, handled the notification through her attorney, Mr. Crowell." She paused as if listening to a ticking clock. "I'm very sorry for your loss, Miss Carter."
"My loss," I repeated, and a laugh tried to claw its way out of my throat and turned itself into a cough. "Where exactly did I pass away?" "At your residence," she said. "There's also a durable financial power of attorney recorded last month naming Miss Carter as your agent due to declining capacity. It appears she coordinated arrangements with a home hospice liaison." The woman's voice softened. "Ma'am, if you are who you say you are, you need to come down here in person with identification today." I thanked her and ended the call. I watched a trolley roll by with a recorded voice talking cheerfully about ghosts who rattle chains in old hotels. I looked at the paper again. The signature under attending physician belonged to a Dr. Thomas Quimby, spelled with an I, whom I had never met. The witness line was a notary stamp from a shipping store I recognized on Victory Drive. And below the line that said, "Next of kin," my daughter-in-law's name bloomed in blue ink like a bruise. I did not call my son. Mothers know when a call is safe and when it lights a fuse. I dialed the number of my oldest student-turned-friend instead. "June," I said, and my voice did not shake. "I need your ears and your quiet." June Parker teaches 8th grade math now. Once, she was the quiet girl in the back row who pretended numbers were a language she didn't speak. Now she eats them for breakfast. "Talk to me," she said, warm and steady, and I told her everything in a voice that was too calm to belong to a living woman. June didn't gasp. She didn't perform shock for me. "Come by my classroom door at 3. I'll be in after-school tutoring. We will print, copy, and stack until the facts outweigh the fiction. In the meantime, do not go home alone." I said I'd be careful and hung up. Then I walked to the courthouse, a building that wears its bricks like a pressed uniform, and took a number like somebody waiting to renew a car tag. When my number was called, I slid the paper across the counter to a clerk with a nurse's kindness in her face. She looked from me to the document and back again.
"You brought your driver's license?" she asked. I handed it over. She studied my picture and then my hands, as if hands tell the truth that faces sometimes don't. "We will research this immediately," she said. "If it's fraudulent, we'll flag the record and open an investigation. In the meantime, please know that certain systems update overnight. If you run into trouble, a bank, a doctor, have them call here." She slid a card across the desk with her name typed neat and firm. D. Hodge, Records. "Thank you," I said. I stood a little straighter, as if posture could push me back into the world. I did not drive home. I bought time like milk and bread. I sat in a booth at a diner that smells like bacon fat and coffee and ordered pancakes I did not want. I watched rain form at the edge of the world and roll toward us like a decision. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter-in-law, Olivia, a photo of my grandson at soccer practice with the caption, "He scored twice. Come over for dinner if you're up to it, Mom." I stared at the emoji heart as if it might tell me where she kept her sharper knives. I should tell you about Olivia. She is the kind of woman who looks like the lobby of a very good hotel, polished, scented lightly with something expensive, helpful if you stand where she has placed you. She married my son Daniel 4 years after my husband died. Daniel loved her like a solution. She made lists. She smiled at the right times. She said she would take care of everything. And my son, who has always wanted to believe life is a group project, handed her the markers. I texted back, "Proud of that boy. I have quilting tonight. Another time." I paid in cash and left a tip that said, "I am still here and I honor the people who see me." The rain arrived with a low, satisfied rumble while I sat in the high school parking lot waiting for June's last bell. Teachers spilled out holding tote bags and paper coffee cups. Teenagers held hands like umbrellas might feel. When June opened the passenger door and slid in, she brought with her the smell of dry erase markers and determination.
"Okay," she said, "tell me everything again." I told it in straight lines: the copy shop, the clerk, the call, the name of the lawyer, the notary stamp. I showed her the paper. She took a photo and airdropped it to her laptop. "First," she said, "we anchor the facts. Second, we look for motives. Third, we look for holes you can walk through. Somebody wants me to be dead on paper before I am dead in the world," I said. "What does a person gain from killing me without touching my body?" June's fingers flew. "Insurance," she said, "access to accounts, real estate transfers, Social Security benefits, or, less dramatic, control. If a durable power of attorney is recorded, even without the death record, someone can move money while you nap." "My house," I said. "It is paid for. My savings are not rich, but they are mine. Daniel's name is not on either. He will inherit someday. Someday is not today." "Let's find your lawyer," June said. "Everyone leaves a fingerprint on the internet, even the ones who think they are invisible." The lawyer, Mr. Crowell, kept a website that looked like money had been spent to make it look like money had not been spent. His bio said, "Estate and elder planning, compassionate, efficient." His testimonials called him a gentleman who understands family. She clicked through to county filings and typed his name. We watched the screen populate with case numbers: wills probated, guardianships established, powers of attorney recorded. "Look at this," she murmured. She pulled 5 guardianship cases with the same sequence of steps: a petition for emergency temporary guardianship, a doctor's letter citing mild cognitive impairment, a swift hearing, and then an orderly transfer of assets. In 4, the elderly person had died within 6 months of the paperwork. In 3, a care consultant named Blue Shore Services appeared in billing notes.
"I've never heard of Blue Shore," I said. June clicked. The Blue Shore website was a single page with a stock photo of folded hands and a slogan that tried too hard, where compassion meets clarity. No address, no team bios, a number that went to a voicemail. I taught math long enough to get suspicious when the pattern repeats too neatly, June said softly. "I think Blue Shore is not real. I think it's a door someone uses to step into other people's kitchens without wiping their feet." "Olivia runs a care coordination side hustle," I said, and my tongue found the chip in my front tooth the way it does when I am thinking. She calls it concierge elder assistance. She says the word concierge like a prayer. She started telling us about it last year at Thanksgiving, after the pie, but before the truth. She wore cream cashmere and said families need someone who can handle the hard decisions with heart. My sister, who is a nurse, raised an eyebrow and asked for her credentialing. Olivia said her credential was being the kind of woman who gets it done. June looked at me the way she did when she was 13 and discovered she could factor a problem in one line. "Ruth," she said, and the kindness in my name made my eyes sting. "You did not imagine this. You did not misremember. Something is moving under your life, and it has your daughter-in-law's fingerprints on it." "I would like," I said, "to be angrier later. Right now, I would like to be useful." "Then we are going to print," June said. "We will make 3 binders. We will color code. When people try to make you small with their voices, we will put paper in front of them until they have to see you." We made a grocery list of evidence: my driver's license, my property deed, the title to my car, my health records showing no hospice enrollment, phone records, screenshots of the Blue Shore website, the county case prints, and a page where I wrote, in my neat teacher hand, "Today I walked into a copy shop and they handed me proof that I do not exist." We slid everything into sleeves and labeled the tabs. We made a table of contents. People think paper is old-fashioned, but paper comforts a frightened mind the way a hand does. It is weight, it is edges, it is a thing you can hold. I slept that night at June's spare room because old women learn to be brave at the right speed. We put my car in her garage and pulled the chain on the door. June texted her brother, who was a detective in neighboring Chatham County, and he said, "Do not go home alone. I will meet you at the courthouse in the morning. Bring everything." We did not sleep much. I lay awake and made a list of the things I have survived: childbirth, breast cancer, a husband who died with love in his hands, a school board that thought math teachers should be quiet, a storm that lifted the river into our street, and every time a man called me dear to make me smaller. I added my own death certificate to the list and closed my eyes. By 8 the next morning, the courthouse lobby smelled like rain and stone. June's brother, Marcus Parker, shook my hand and looked at me the way a good mechanic looks at an engine, listening for knocks. He read the death certificate. He read the notary stamp. He took a photo of the QR code that linked to the filed record and sent it to someone he trusts. "We follow process," he said, "but we also move fast. Records can be pulled and replaced. People can switch scripts when they know you've seen the first draft. The clerk who had given me her card, Miss Hodge, appeared behind the glass and waved us into a small conference room that smelt like old carpet and lemon cleaner. She had 3 folders in front of her. I put a temporary hold on any further automated updates under this record, she said. This is unusual, but unusual is not unheard of. I have a supervisor who believes policies are parachutes, not straitjackets. She slid one folder toward me. Inside was a copy of a statement of attending. The doctor's letterhead looked real until you noticed the phone number was missing a digit. The doctor's signature looked practiced. The notary stamp belonged to a girl who wears false eyelashes the size of dragonflies and wants notarized grocery lists for teenage lovers who thought it was romantic. I know this because I taught her mother and once brought donuts to a graduation party where the girl showed me a ring the size of a kneecap and said she was going to be a businesswoman of vibes. We will verify with the medical board, Miss Hodge said. We'll call the notary, but the fastest path for you is to file an affidavit of living status. You will swear in front of our judge that your heart is beating in your own chest. Bring identification, bring a witness. I can put you on the afternoon docket. I will bring an army, I said. We walked 3 blocks to the shipping store where the notary stamp was born. The clerk, a young man with acne, kindness, and a shirt with the store logo embroidered crooked, blinked at me and at Marcus's badge. The notary herself came from the back. She recognized me and smiled the smile people give when they realize they have seen your face on more polite days. Miss Carter, she said, and her voice tried to find shelter under the counter. I didn't know that was about you. He said his mother was very sick. He had a doctor's letter and everything. He? Marcus said. Daniel, she said softly, your son. I sat on the stool at the counter because sometimes power arrives disguised as disappointment, and you need to sit to receive it. I didn't know that was about you. Did he bring Olivia? I asked. The girl's hand shook as she reached for a cup of pins. She stood beside him. She said to make it quick because it hurt him to talk about it. She swallowed. I checked their IDs. I stamped what they put in front of me. Who paid you? Marcus asked. He did, she said, and her eyes were wet now. Cash. The total was $32, and he said to keep the coins. She made copies of the notary journal, the names, the date, the listed document. When we walked back to the curb, the clouds split, and a stripe of sun found the street like a promise. I did not call Daniel. I called Olivia. Sweetheart, I said, and sweetness can be a blade when you know where to hold it. We're headed into court to swear that I am alive. It appears there is a misunderstanding. The clerk says you submitted a power of attorney naming yourself my agent due to my declining capacity. I would love to know when you first noticed my decline. I could hear my old principal in my voice, the one she used when teachers were caught photocopying entire workbooks. Olivia did not fumble. She never does. Mother, she said, you forget how much you lean on me. You've been making little mistakes. You repeat questions. You told the mailman you were the babysitter last week, remember? I told the mailman that to avoid giving a stranger information about my schedule, I said. Olivia, dear, you notarized my death. A silence bloomed. Then she laughed, a sound as tidy as a folded napkin. That's absurd. We filed paperwork for advance directives. Maybe the clerk misentered something. Let's not make a scene. We will not make a scene, I said, and looked up at the courthouse steps, the door opening and closing like the throat of a patient. We will make a record. In the judge's cramped courtroom, I raised my right hand and swore that my heart was beating without assistance. June stood beside me and squeezed my elbow when my voice thinned. Marcus laid our binder on the table, and the judge, a woman with a face like the good china your grandmother brings out for funerals, paged through it. She tapped the doctor's letter with her pen. This is a font from a template service, she said, almost to herself. People who lie always forget a small thing that a woman who reads for a living will notice. She signed an order invalidating the recorded death and directed the clerk to notify the state systems. She set an evidentiary hearing on Friday to consider sanctions. Bring your son, bring the daughter-in-law, bring the lawyer, let's hear choir and soloist. When we stepped back into the hallway, the air tasted like pennies. June exhaled. You are steady. You are ferocious and a library voice. Now we move, Marcus said. They will move too. Most people double down when their story starts to leak. He was right. At 4 p.m., my bank called to ask whether I had really requested a wire to an out-of-state account for Blue Shore Services in the amount of $78,500. The manager said, "It's flagged as hospice related. We wanted to confirm because your signature on file is exuberant, and this one is neat as a ruler." "Decline," I said. "Freeze everything that isn't an automatic payment for lights and water. Put a password on my voice." At 5 p.m., my neighbor texted a photo of my driveway. A silver SUV I did not recognize sat in front of my garage. 2 people stood at my front door with clipboards. "They knocked for 10 minutes," she wrote. "When they left, they put a paper under your mat." At 5:15, I watched the doorbell footage on my phone from June's kitchen table. The man wore a polo shirt with the Blue Shore logo. The woman's ponytail was tight enough to ping. They peered into my windows with the patient entitlement of people who think paperwork is a key to your private spaces. When they walked away, the camera caught the side of the SUV, and there was Olivia's parking sticker. St. Julian Medical, volunteer. "Volunteer my foot," I said, and June snorted into her tea. We drove to my house with Marcus following in his sedan. The rain had rinsed the world and left it smelling like fresh-cut lemons. Inside my front hallway, Blue Shore's paper waited on the mat like a mousetrap. Scheduled home evaluation today at 5 p.m. to confirm safety and capacity concerns. My stomach tightened. Safety and capacity, the paired words criminals use when they want your keys. We did not touch anything else. Evidence is rude when you rearrange it. We walked from room to room and made a list of small wrongs. The stack of mail moved, the framed photo of my husband a half-inch off-center, the guest room window set to vent, and on my kitchen counter, a business card from Mr. Crowell, weighted by a stone from Tybee Island my grandson had placed there last summer. "Stop by my office tomorrow," the back read, in Olivia's loopy loops. "We can clean this up." I slept again at June's. We braided our hair like girls and lay in the dark and whispered not about fear, but about what we would make for breakfast in a world where truth still means something. "Cornbread and peaches," I said. "Bacon so crispy it shatters." We fell asleep to the sound of rain working the gutters. In the morning, Marcus knocked at 7 with coffee and a plan. I spoke to a friend in the DA's office. They want a clean path. Friday's hearing will help. In the meantime, we collect call logs, bank attempted transfers, notary journal, doctor license verification. We also need Blue Shore tied to a human face. "Olivia," I said. "And the lawyer," he added. "Crowell has a habit of sitting in the second pew at hearings he wants to pretend he isn't steering." We arrived at Crowell & Associates at 10. The receptionist greeted me by my first name the way receptionists do when they've been trained to be disarming. Mr. Crowell's office was a museum of wood, mahogany desk, paneling, shelves that held leather-bound law books, and photographs of him standing beside men who run golf tournaments. He stood to shake my hand with a warmth that belonged in a church line. "Miss Carter," he said, "we were just going to call you. There's been a mishap, a clerical miscommunication regarding some advanced planning forms." "A clerical miscommunication," I repeated, as if I might write it down and frame it. "Forms are more dramatic than life sometimes. No harm has been done." "An attempted wire of $78,500 seems like harm's earnest brother," I said, "and the Blue Shore people peered into my kitchen." He glanced at a file on his desk. "We'll unwind the transaction attempts and cancel any erroneous filings. Olivia was trying to ensure your comfort and safety. Frankly, Miss Carter, it would be wise for you to consider transitioning your affairs to someone who can keep up. These matters get complicated." I thought about the girl with the dragonfly eyelashes and the $32. I thought about my son choosing the kind of woman who gets it done. Complication and theft look the same from far away, but up close, one has a receipt. Krau's smile thinned. "If you'd like, we can draft an agreement to avoid litigation. It's better for families to stay off the record." I folded my hands the way I used to fold them for students who thought cheating on a quiz using a water bottle label was clever. "I prefer records," I said. "We will see you in court on Friday." His eyes cooled. "Be careful, Miss Carter. There's a fine line between stubbornness and confusion at your age." June's chair scraped as she stood. It made a long sound that belonged to women who have run out of patience. There's also a line between compassion and conspiracy. Careful how you cross it. We left without signing anything. On the sidewalk, the heat wrapped around us like a wet towel. June exhaled. "I wanted to throw his pen holder," she said. "You get one pen holder per lifetime. Save it for someone worse." Thursday arrived with a sky the color of brushed steel. Ms. Hodge called to confirm Friday's hearing and to ask whether we would consent to consolidating the emergency restraining order with the evidentiary record. "It will save you a trip," she said. "I like the way you think," I told her. "We consent." That afternoon, I did something that doesn't look like strategy, but is. I baked. I made peach cobbler in the blue casserole dish my mother gave me when I married. I brought half to June's principal and labeled it as thanks for letting us use the copier after hours. I brought half to Miss Hodge with a note. "Thank you for calling things by their right names. When the world slides, you find the people who press their feet into the floor and steady it." The night before court, I sat at June's kitchen table and wrote a letter to Daniel. I wrote that I loved him the way mothers love sons, even when they are foolish and frightening. I wrote that marrying the wrong woman is not a crime, and neither is wanting to make life simpler when it is not. I wrote that participating in theft is a crime, even if you call it helping. I wrote that I would stand in front of him in court and tell the truth, and that if he stood beside his wife, he would be standing on skates on a river that is breaking up. I slept an hour. I woke up and watched the square outside June's windows glow green and gold under street lights that never sleep. I drank water. I laid out my dress, navy, the color of decisions, with a string of pearls that belonged to my mother, and for luck, the bracelet my grandson made me at camp that spells out Nana with plastic letters. Friday morning, the benches in the courtroom were full. The building hums differently on Fridays, like a choir doing scales. The judge took the bench with the weight of the week in her shoulders and called our case first. Crowell rose with the practiced humility of a man who has been thanked publicly too many times. Olivia sat at council table with a notebook and a pen that matched her blouse. Daniel sat behind them with his hands folded, as if prayer might untangle arithmetic. "Miss Carter," the judge said to me, "you may proceed." I did not give a speech, I gave a lesson plan. I introduced Exhibit 1, my driver's license and passport, and I said I am alive. I introduced Exhibit 2, the recorded death certificate and the mismatched doctor's office number. Exhibit 3, the notary journal with my son's handwriting. Exhibit 4, bank records of attempted transfers flagged the day I corrected my status at the courthouse. Exhibit 5, Blue Shore's website and the absence of team bios, addresses, licenses. Exhibit 6, a list of guardianship petitions with the same sequence of events. Crowell as attorney, Blue Shore and the billing notes, elderly person dead within 6 months. Exhibit 7, my front door video of Blue Shore staff peering into my home. Exhibit 8, a copy of the business card Olivia left weighted by my grandson's stone. I did not accuse, I identified. I did not tremble. I steadied my voice the way I did in fire drills with 30 children who watched my face to know a smoke meant panic or protocol. Olivia testified. She said she was trying to help. She said I had episodes. She said she filed pre-need arrangements and the court clerk must have miscoded them. She said Blue Shore was a reputable care coordination service and that I had spoken warmly of them. She brought out a photo of me sitting on my porch last spring, squinting into sunlight as if fatigue were a diagnosis. She cried carefully. Crowell spoke about miscommunication in bureaucratic systems. He invoked the phrase best interest the way magicians invoke smoke. June took the stand and explained patterns without raising her voice. Marcus presented the doorbell video and the bank calls, and Miss Hodge testified on the font that gave away the doctor's letter, which she explained is not proof of fraud alone, but is often consistent with documents prepared by people who do not know what they do not know. Then the judge asked my son to stand. Daniel stood the way he did when he was 8 and caught with pockets full of marbles that belonged to the class jar. "Mr. Carter," she said, "did you present documents to a notary stating your mother had passed?" He swallowed. I signed what Olivia prepared. "Did you read what you signed?" His eyes flicked to his wife and then to me. He loved us both in different languages. "No," he whispered. "I signed where she told me." "Did you attempt to initiate a wire from your mother's account?" He glanced again at Olivia. She stared at the table. "I was told it was to cover hospice services. I believed that. Do you believe that now?" He closed his eyes. "No," he said. And in that moment, he did not break. He hardened. The judge breathed through her nose and wrote steady lines on the pad in front of her. "Here is what we will do," she said. "The court finds the recorded death certificate is fraudulent, invalid, and dangerous. The court issues a temporary restraining order preventing Miss Olivia Carter, Mr. Daniel Carter, Blue Shore Services, Crowell and Associates, and any agent acting on their behalf from accessing, attempting to access, transferring, or encumbering any asset, record, or decision associated with Miss Ruth Ann Carter. The court orders the clerk to notify the Department of Public Health to correct any linked systems. We will reconvene for a full evidentiary hearing in 2 weeks. In the meantime, Miss Carter is alive, competent, and, if I may say, formidable." A murmur ran through the room like wind through a wheat field. Crowell's mouth pressed into a thin line. Olivia held still in a way that read like calculation. Daniel wept without sound. Outside, the square was bright and loud. A marching band practicing for some parade that would happen without asking our permission pushed brass into the air until the world felt like Saturday. Marcus shook my hand and said, We keep this quiet and steady now. Blue Shore will try to evaporate. Crowell will try to pivot. Olivia will attempt penance while setting a trap. He was right again. Over the next 10 days, Blue Shore's website vanished. The phone number went to a message that said the mailbox was full. Crowell's office released a statement that used the phrase breakdown in a third-party system and moved to withdraw from representing Olivia, citing differences in strategy. And Olivia arrived at my door with flowers, wearing the humility she keeps in a garment bag. "Mother," she began. She stood on my porch where my husband once played Sam Cooke on a boombox while sanding a chair. "I never meant for any of this to hurt you. I saw you struggling lately. I want to get help. Mr. Crowell told me this was the correct process. Blue Shore came highly recommended. We can undo this together." "Recommended by whom?" I asked. She smiled the way women smile when they need you to believe they can't sweat. "Friends, people who care for their elders." "Name one," I said, and she could not. "Olivia," I continued, and I let motherhood fall from my voice until only math remained. "A notary recorded my death while I was standing in line for quarters. Your husband signed it. The law firm you chose attempted to move money with a note that said hospice. Blue Shore tried to enter my home. I will not open my door to you again without my lawyer and a witness. I will meet you in court." She stared past me into my house, at the couch where my grandson builds forts, and at the lamp that makes evening generous. "You're making this ugly," she said softly, "the way people do when they are used to ugliness favoring them." "No," I said, "I am calling it by its right name." The second hearing was quieter. The DA's investigator presented the doctor's signature analysis. It belonged to no licensed physician, only to a person with a history of printing fake excuse notes in high school for cash. A retired hospice. She stared past me into my house, at the couch where my grandson builds forts, and at the lamp that makes evening generous. "You're making this ugly," she said softly, "the way people do when they're used to ugliness favoring them." "No," I said, "I am calling it by its right name." The second hearing was quieter. The DA's investigator presented the doctor's signature analysis. It belonged to no licensed physician, only to a person with a history of printing fake excuse notes in high school for cash. A retired hospice nurse testified that Blue Shore's PAIR plans were plagiarized from a national hospice's public brochures. The notary cried and said she was sorry and that she would do training before stamping things again. Crowell insisted he had been misled by his client. Olivia sat straight-backed, cheeks pale, and asked to make a statement. "I wanted to protect the family," she said. "I wanted to avoid mess. Families fall apart when elders refuse help. I did not intend fraud." The judge lifted her pen. "Intent," she said, "is a private theater. Evidence is public. Today we deal with what touches the record. The rest is for God and your conscience." The order became permanent. The DA filed charges: filing false documents, attempted fraud, exploitation of an elder. Crowell negotiated his way into the role of a man who holds open a door for prosecutors and hopes they do not ask where he bought the hinges. Olivia posted bond and sat at home in a house my son had believed was the address of peace. Daniel stayed with a friend. Let me tell you what justice feels like when it is not a television show. Slow and careful and like sleeping with one eye open for a long time. You do not dance in your kitchen. You do not pound a table. You change your locks and you subscribe to text alerts from every institution that has your name. You breathe from the belly. You talk to your son with love and with boundaries. You measure twice before you cut. You buy yourself a better porch light. You plant rosemary so the air will have something honest in it. I sold my house in the fall to a young couple who wrote me a letter about their baby who would be born in winter. I bought a smaller place on the 3rd floor of a building with a stubborn elevator and a view of a church steeple that looks like a finger pointing you toward better company. I joined June's after-school program to teach kids how to make a budget because the world is full of people who will tell you numbers are mean when usually they are just telling the truth. The DA's office called in December. Olivia took a plea. 5 years with 2 in custody and the rest on probation, restitution of what she tried to take, and a ban on working in any role that touches elder care, fiduciary responsibilities, or end-of-life coordination. Crowell surrendered his license for 3 years and agreed to ethics training that will not change him, but may hold him a little bit longer at the edges. Blue Shore is a ghost people whisper about to warn other ghosts. Daniel found a therapist who tells him that being loved does not mean letting someone straighten your life until it breaks. He apologized. He stood in my kitchen and said, "Mother, I wanted to hand my life to someone who promised to carry it with both hands. I didn't see she was using those hands to pick pockets." I touched his cheek and told him that adulthood is when you stop wanting the substitute teacher who rolls in the television and start wanting the one who makes you read the whole chapter. I am alive. I teach old women at the library how to put passwords on their bank apps and how to set up alerts and how to look at their children with eyes that hold love and a ledger. I carry a copy of my affidavit of living status in my purse the way other women carry old tickets to good concerts. I call my grandson on Thursdays and ask him about science class until he tells me secrets like meteors and math jokes. Sometimes I walk past the copy shop where the clerk printed my death. He waves when he sees me, relieved again. We have a ritual now. I buy a pack of paper, he gives me a free binder clip, and we agree that the things meant to destroy you sometimes simply show you where to fortify. When it rains in Savannah, the streets look like a polished floor a mother might scold you for walking on with your shoes. The river lifts itself and kisses the edges of the city as if to say, "I could take you if I wanted." And the city says back, "We know." And then they keep their delicate agreement. I think about that when I lock my door at night. The world can swell and press, and you can brace a chair under the handle and call it safety. But the deeper thing is the agreements you make with yourself. To call danger by its name, to refuse to sign what hurts you, to ask for help from people who love the work of helping more than they love being thanked. If you are listening to me because someone made you feel small with paperwork and a smile, write this down on something that cannot be easily deleted. You are here. Your breath is evidence. Your name belongs to you. Find the people who use binders like armor and lemon bars like medals. Gather what you can prove. Walk into the rooms that scare you with a witness and a steady voice. Judges are just women and men who read for a living. Give them good sentences. I will end with what my grandmother said in a kitchen that smelled like cornbread and sternness. Kindness without boundaries is a bonfire without a ring. It will burn you while you're feeling proud of all that light. Make the ring. Light the fire anyway. Warm everyone who comes honest. And when someone tries to roast you over your own good nature, pick up the poker and say the word no as if it's your first language. I am Ruth Ann Carter. I am 67 years old. I am not dead. I have a small apartment with a stubborn elevator and a view of a steeple that points me toward better company. On Fridays, when the courthouse hums and the city catches its breath, I walk to the square, sit on a bench, and eat a peach with the care you give something that bruises easily and is still worth the trouble. If you're passing by, sit with me. Tell me the thing you survived that tried to convince you that you hadn't. We will count our breaths together. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. We will write our names on paper and sign them with hands that shake a little from the effort of living. And then we will stand up and go on.